Alright boys and girls, today I'm going to show you how to work a jerkbait properly. Alright, so I have people that usually ask me what I use for pike, what I use for bass, and a jerkbait is always in my top 3. So the purpose of this video is to teach you how to work a jerkbait properly, because I don't want to tell someone, hey, buy a jerkbait, they go use a jerkbait and they don't use it properly. It's probably my top #1 bait of all time, and I don't think I've ever gotten outfished on the same boat by it. So I'm going to show you how to actually jerk a jerkbait properly, and then I'm going to go into just some tips, best practices, and things you should look out for while using it, some stuff that I've just learned over the years. So I'll show you how to actually use it now. Alright guys, so step 1, cast it out. When you jerk a jerkbait, the trick is you need to be jerking on slack line. You should never have your line on full tension and then jerk like this. This is full tension. This, see this? This is slack. When your line is loose and dangly on the top of the water, that's called slack. You only jerk when your line is in this state. You never jerk when your line is tension and you could feel your bait. You never jerk when your line is in that state. So step #1, always jerk when you're on slack line. So how do you create slack line? Let me show you. So you make a cast, bait hits the water. Just naturally how your line falls, there'll be a slack in the line. Can you see? Yeah, you can probably see it. You can see my line is not very tight. There is just a little bit of a loop on the top of the water, and it's laying with slack. And what you want to do is, what I'll do here with my rod, is I'll jerk downwards on that slack, and with every jerk, since you're bringing it a little bit closer to the boat every time, you're creating more slack. So to get rid of that slack you created, but still keep a little bit of slack, every time you jerk, you're simultaneously doing about 1 full rotation of the reel. So I'll jerk, which creates the slack, and as I'm coming up for my next jerk, I'll be reeling up the slack I just created, and then I go down for my next jerk, but I don't reel up all the slack. So I'll reel up most of the slack, next jerk. I'll reel up most of the slack, next jerk. 1 jerk, as I'm coming up, I'm basically reeling up that slack I created. I'm going again. I'm coming up, I'm going again. So you never want to reel up all the slack, but you want to reel up most of it, because if you're just jerking and not reeling, then eventually your line's just going to be all slack and it's just going to be a mess. So that's basically what you want to do reel wise. With every jerk, as you prepare for the next one, you reel up most of your slack, and then you go down for another jerk without reeling up all of your slack. Okay, so now you know to only jerk on slack line. Now you know how to kind of work your hand with your reel to always make sure there is slack line to jerk on. Now, how do you know if your jerks are good? Well, I'm going to show you now. So, the #1 way to know that, yeah, my jerks are fucking good, is the line should be making a snapping noise off the top of the water, like almost like Moses parting the Red Sea. Your line should part the water, like just almost like a shock of electricity down your line. Just it just snaps the top of the water. You should see it, the water snap off your line, and you should hear it. So we'll show you that now. So I'm gonna be quiet, and you guys are gonna be able to hear the sound that the line makes snapping off the water, and you should be able to see how my line is in the water right now. You should be able to see sort of it like zap. The water will zap off the line. You see how this line is sort of zapping the water, snapping it, and you can hear that. Are you seeing all that shit pop off? Yeah. You hear that? That was a bit of an exaggeration on what I was just doing, but that's the sound you're looking for. You're trying to hear and listen to that. That's the sound of your line being slack, tightening up as the jerk comes, and then all of that pressure that built up hitting your bait, and then your bait just goes, and that's what creates that real erratic action back to the boat, and that's what you want. So create slack, so make sure there's slack in your line. Only jerk on slack line. 2, do what I said with your reel. Before every new jerk, you're pretty much reeling up the excess slack that you just created from the previous jerk. And as you're jerking, listen and watch. If you hear and if you see the water sort of snap off your line as if your line is charged with electricity, then you're jerking properly. That's the only way to jerkbait properly. Your cadence, however fast or slow you like to do it, that doesn't matter. That's personal preference, that's time of day, time of year, that can be changed. The actual jerks themselves, This is the only way to do it properly. Now I'm going to show you about what a jerkbait should look like when worked properly. So I'm just going to make a small cast here. We'll just bring this bait by the boat. So I'll do a comparison. This is what it looks like if you just reel your bait in. Another one. You want to see a side-to-side erratic movement, head first and nose down after every jerk.
Yeah, I see it.
You see that erratic action? Side to side. I'm just putting some soft twitches here just so you guys can see it. Can you see it?
Yep.
Try it. Got that?
Yep.
Oh, okay, so now the last thing I'm going to say is the direction you jerk your rod also matters. So there are some people that will cast out. They'll cast out and they'll jerkbait to the side of their body, or they'll jerkbait like kind of down on a diagonal like this, or to the side. There's nothing really wrong with that. You can still do the proper jerks, but if you want to catch the most amount of fish, I don't think that's the best way. And I think the way I do it is the best way, which is a straight downward jerk. My rod goes up and down, straight up and down. There's no side action, there's no diagonal, there's no jerking across the side of your body. Straight up and down. So I'll show you now. I'll show you what an optimal cast for me looks like. You see how I'm jerking directly to the ground. I'm not going to the side, I'm not doing diagonal, I'm not doing up. Straight down jerks. Now down jerks are the best because they give you the most control. I find they're the most sensitive because you're in contact with your line more than if you were to go sideways. And they just give you the best jerks. Just the control you have from just a snap down method will always beat the side to side control. So I would suggest you get a spinning rod and you jerk straight down, because with a bait caster it's kind of hard to jerk down. If you jerk with a bait caster, you're gonna have to jerk sideways, but I would suggest spinning gear for jerk baiting always, because it allows you to jerk down properly. You can't do that on a bait caster, so I would get a spinning gear. And now if you're thinking, Thomas, what if I jerk down and the tip of my rod's gonna smash the ground because I'm a shore fisherman, or I fish from the boat and the tip of my rod's gonna smash the boat? How am I gonna jerk down? Well, you get a short rod for jerk baiting. This is a 6.3, I think, 6.3 G Loomis Bronzeback series. I would not touch a jerk rod over 6.3. I'm 5'10", 5'11" on a good day, and I wouldn't go higher than 6.3. If you're like a 6'2 guy, maybe you can go with like a 6'6". But rule of thumb is your jerkbait rod should be short enough where if you jerk downwards, like pretty much standing on shore, your rod should not be smashing the ground. Like you should be able to jerk downwards properly and not have your rod smash the ground or smash your boat. So however tall you are, figure out whatever rod you need. But I would say 6 foot to 6'3" for the majority of fishermen. It's perfect size because it allows you to jerk downwards. And I use medium action, fast tip, 2500 spinning reel. I know guys use a lot of different types of line for jerkbaiting. Personally, I like braid because it's the least amount of headaches. Obviously, it's not the most invisible, so that's another argument you can get into. I think there's other types of line that might be better. Personally, I like braid, least amount of headaches, and I honestly never had a problem with it. And like I said, I don't think anyone's ever outfished me on my boat or a boat with a jerkbait. So until someone outfishes me with fluoro, I'm gonna keep using my straight braid. Okay, so like I said, cadence doesn't really matter. I like just a regular cadence. I know some people that just go pop, 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 all the way back to the boat and they don't stop. I know some people that cast and go 1, 2. They just wait forever. 3, 4, wait forever. So the amount of pauses, usually a good rule of thumb is it's colder, the fish are more lethargic, and or the fish are off, they're not as active. You want longer pauses. You really want to let that jerkbait soak in between each jerk. That will trigger those more lethargic, lazy fish. Middle of the day, if it's hot, fish are active, you don't need to hold your pauses as long. You could just do it normally. All right, so some other little best practices you should know about jerkbaiting. If you're fishing from line to bait without the use of a leader, then this won't matter. But what I'm about to say next matters if you're using a leader, which is what I do when I'm going for pike like I am now, because the jerkbait is one of my best baits to use for pike. If you're using a leader, a lot of the times when you jerk, you'll find that your hook will get caught. I can't even do it if I tried, but of course it does it every cast. Your hook will get caught on the leader, sort of like this. It will basically get fouled and snagged throughout the middle of your cast. You'll have to reel up, get it undone, and cast again. Now the reason for this, it's not your line, your bait, your leader. Well, it is your leader. It's just, that's what happens when you use a leader, like a 6-inch leader on a jerkbait. It doesn't happen with all baits. I find specifically some baits it's worse than others. Like the mega bass doesn't give me a big of a problem with it, but for example the Duo Realis jerkbait, that always fouls on itself when you use a leader. So just keep that in mind when you're using a leader. One way to mitigate this is, it'll happen the most if, let's say like right now I'm fishing and the wind's blowing this way, and if I cast with the wind, since I'm casting with the wind and going towards my bait with my boat, I'm creating more slack than I should be, and that excess slack that hangs and it causes the leader to hang is the reason why the leader is more likely to get caught. If you're fishing in heavy winds or against the wind or perpendicular to the wind, the excess slack that's created is kind of swept with the wind. It's covered, it's like it's more wavy, so you don't get in the situations where you're creating an excess amount of slack. So if you're fishing in windier areas or against the wind or perpendicular, your leader should not foul up as much. So just keep that in mind. If you're fishing calm, it will foul up more because you're more likely to create excess slack. All right guys, so that, in my opinion, is how you jerkbait properly. Go pick up a jerkbait. Any fish you could ask for in Ontario will slam jerkbaits. Fish them exactly how I taught you today, preferably on the type of gear I taught you: spinning, short rod, downward jerks. Sideways jerks are for they're for weirdos. You want to be fucking doing downward jerks. But yeah, see you on the next one, boys.